brainstorming on what would be the kinds of measurable objectives that the subcommittee might propose and recommend to council, which would then recommend them to the administration. That was the first and a pretty major proposed goal. The second one, there's actually three in a row. Number 2, 3, and 4 are in some ways connected, but there's also been discussion over the last 6 months or longer about the possibility of engaging other lenders in discussions, either to consider them as a potential next banking partner for the county, or some of the discussions seem to be, do we want to engage them in separate discussions anyway? And with that in mind, the research that I had done for county council using the most recently available data went through 2021 calendar year. There is, so let me back up a step. The next time that research could be completed for the whole county, for all lenders, would be, the data would be available possibly in September, and it would probably, for 2022 calendar year data, and that could be done late October or November. So that's a ways off, but. Oh. Right, banks could do that voluntarily, but there is an alternative, which I've outlined in number 2, and that is that even though the large data set for the whole county, all lenders for 2022 won't be available till September, individual lenders' data is available on the financial, I want to get the acronym right here, the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, has on their website, and it's actually also available on the Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council, the FFIEC, and so individual bank data can be downloaded. The problem is that what I've done before that's made the research really valuable is when I got the massive data set, I collaborated with Case Western Reserve, and they added to that data neighborhood boundaries, suburbs, and regional boundaries like east side, west side. That made this incredibly useful. These individual banks' data will also not have that, but I could download the data for the 7 banks that I did look at closely in this last research, and I could update the charts for those 7 banks. And I could do that probably, if I get the same help from Case Western, I could probably do it in 30 days. And it would, I guess my proposal is that you ask me to do that. Although I might be inclined to do it on my own initiative, but it makes sense. Right. Yeah. Mm. Correct.
Madam Chair, if you could speak into, thank you.
Sorry about that. The folks in Treasury and Housing and Community and Economic Development so that this is, and especially his executive team, because they will be who with Treasury is preparing the request for proposals. And I am committed to helping the administration as much as I possibly can ask the right questions of the potential vendors so that we can get the right benefit for our constituents.
I think that makes sense, and it certainly would be a great benefit for the administration.
Yes, yeah. and so keeping staff on both sides of the table fully aware of this committee's desire to look at the data and have responses from organizations that will go the extra mile on behalf of our constituents is incredibly important to our leadership. It is important to have banks in the community. We agree about that. But we also need for the significant depository relationship that we will have with whoever responds and is awarded the contract, we want to see some significant benefit in awarded to the community. And most importantly, the specificity that you're recommending should have numerical value in a positive and increasing format. Because more investment in this county means that we are not just a county of poor people anymore. And it creates opportunities for people who are poor to be better employed and to do more for themselves and their family and depend less on public support. We are supposed to be a safety net, and I do not resent being a safety net and helping to care for folks who just haven't had opportunities, but providing them with opportunities, which is what additional investment from lenders in helping make more mortgages, helping increase the number of loans that go to small businesses, helping do rehab loans, all of the things that are elements of what we're looking at is incredibly important to increasing the per capita net worth of people in this county. And so I want to encourage, how many lenders did you have?
There are
6 or
seven,
7?
and I could say just a moment, why were those 7 selected? There are two reasons for that. One is in the 2020 RFP, or it might have been an RFQ that was released by the county administration for the 2020 banking services agreement. I think there were 6 banks who applied, and I believe that they're all in that 7. Might have to double check that. But the other reason that those 7 were selected is that these are the 7 banks who operate locally who have recently had or currently have community benefits agreements. They're generally multi-state agreements, but they include Ohio and they include Cuyahoga County. The 3 oldest were Fifth Third, Huntington and Key Bank. Their agreements go back 6 years. The newer ones are Bank of America, Chase, PNC, U.S. Bank. And that was the reason, those are the reasons that I looked at those 7. And it's just a guess, but I'm guessing that if the county administration were considering other banks in addition to Key Bank for the next contract, these are the most likely candidates. There could be others. In fact, if other names want to be proposed, you know, I was going to say I could add them, but the problem is to compare them back to the research I just did a couple months ago that went back 6 years. It was only these 7 that went back 6 years. Anyway,
these are likely
please.
Candidates.
Yeah, it looked like they were. Numbers 3 and 4 on the list are really related because number 3 follows directly from number 2. It suggests then review the data that's been, that if I present new charts, updated charts and data to review that, what does it tell us? It might tell us, for example, that a bank that didn't do well up through 21 maybe did much better in 2022, or it could say the reverse. And number 4, because I know that over the past months or so, there's been some discussion at this subcommittee about possibly inviting some other lenders to have conversations with the subcommittee. So number 4 just suggests that could these 7 lenders who are studied, their research is updated, could they be invited to come and have a discussion with this subcommittee?
I think that's an excellent idea. Want to make sure I have someone from the treasurer's office
Right.
present. I'm looking over your shoulder.
Oh, okay, not at me. All right, that's fine.
I'm looking for a yes, no, kind of, sort of. So I at least see the kind of, sort of, yes, because we will not be doing this alone. I see government as a team sport. And so if we are a team sport, then we've got to have a few people listening in the working session and potentially helping us ask better questions. And so I think this is a great idea. We need to figure out how many sessions the working group would like to have, so we know whether we give lenders, if, for example, it's an hour and a half long work session, do we do an hour and a half long with each lender, or are we doing 30 minutes with each lender and spread that
Right.
over 3 sessions, as opposed to, because we've already, Key Bank, I don't think we need to meet with again. But we talked to Bank of America, Chase, Fifth Third, Huntington, PNC, and US Bank.
A question, you'll notice at the bottom of the sheet, there's some notes in italics. These were just some comments that came up during the discussion. One was related to this, questioning, do we have the time before the end of the year to have meetings? How many can we do? And not that anybody was saying we couldn't do it, it was just raising a question. And it was really more raising a question, assuming that the banks were probably coming to this meeting as opposed to a working group, but they could come. So we hadn't fleshed that out completely.
That's a question. We have more or less 6 meetings.
Yeah, left.
Yes. So I think that maybe we have a combination of meetings with the working group to flesh out some of the things we think are important. That to me would mean that we need a conversation with the executive chief of operations, Katie Gallagher, the treasurer, and our working group and staff, so that council staff, so that we figure out some of the best things to ask these folks in short working group sessions, and ask them to come in and testify. And we don't have to give them each 2 hours to testify. They could tell us why they're a good bank in, I would presume, in 30 minutes or less. So we could literally have all of them in 2 sessions.
Well, that's possible.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah,
I don't know that
yeah.
that's what'll actually happen, but it's possible.
So those are the.
Last time the contract
Yeah.
was awarded, it was a substantial contract. It was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 3.2 million. That the value was up to 3.2 million.
I don't
There's
remember.
been an inflationary factor, I would presume, and I don't know because
Yeah.
I have not sat down to look at all of the elements that are in it in a while. It might be for even more, given that we've had inflation. Since there's new leadership, there may be additional tasks. And if we're asking them to do some reporting, which is going to be one of my recommendations, if they're required to do quarterly or semi-annual reports, and we're specifically making a format, you know that there is an overhead cost to doing those kinds of things. And so you see costs not, for example, when we're dealing with the federal dollars for any of the programs, there's always an overhead implication, whether it's the stuff in housing and urban development, or it's the federal Justice Department stuff, or the Health and Human Services stuff. For each of those third-party sources, there's an admin or overhead allowance. And so we'll see what we end up having to negotiate, because I have not looked at the detail on that contract. There's currently no real reporting mechanism.
I don't think so, right.
They just will do best efforts to talk with us. And I want to see us have something that requires them to tell us what they're doing.
Should I go on to the last one?
Yes,
Number
please.
5 is sort of the logical culmination of the first 4, that if the working group proposes things to the subcommittee works on them, that then the subcommittee through the council would then be making recommendations to the administration. But as you've suggested, if the administration is working hand in hand with the council and this subcommittee, maybe that's going to be happening anyway in an organic way.
That's my hope.
Yeah.
And so far, it's not just a hope or an aspiration. We have, while not being in lockstep, we conceptually agree that certain things have to be done. I've spent more time talking with the Director of Housing than I have with the Treasurer, but the Treasurer's here today, And so there's a commitment to follow up on stuff. And it's just human nature that we might have different things that become priority. But long run, we all treasure and value the taxpayers' real estate payments. We want them to pay in full, and we want to use those dollars in ways that can potentially benefit our folks. And so with everybody committed to those kinds of things, I think we will find common ground and find ways to develop a proposal or a request for qualification that's beneficial and specific, because we know that the national reports from NCRC have said that all agreements need to become much more specific for all lenders across the board that enter into these agreements, because they started out well-meaning, but when there was no specificity in them, there was a lack of delivery. And so in Cuyahoga County, we've learned that without specificity, we get commitments verbally, and we have some good reports, but we cannot see statistical improvement, meaning if there was one loan made, we don't necessarily that 3 loans were made 2 years later, one for each year at least. So we want to make sure that we are looking at increasing benefits to the community.
Should I go through the other notes at the bottom?
Yes, please.
So these are not in any particular order, but there was a suggestion that we relook at the original 13 community commitments to see what their applicability might be to other lenders, but with the understanding that, as we've already talked about, the original 13 commitments were fairly vague.
I don't want to lock into those, and I want members of the committee to talk to this.
Yeah.
I don't want to lock into those 13.
Yeah.
I want us to feel free to come up with even 7 new, more vibrant and specific requests. I don't have a number in my head. It could be that we go for 20. But I want us to have realistic requests that can generate specific responses, so that when the executive initiates a piece of legislation, that I, as chair of this committee, can support who they're providing it to, and request that my colleagues support it, because we know that we'll be able to do better analysis and evaluate the benefit much more clearly. Now, that doesn't mean that we have the perfect answer, but I think this is a process of change where we improve and we continue to have people who want answers from these folks. Mr. Nowak.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I think you're spot on in terms of thinking through kind of the next generation of this contract. When you think, I think that, we did a good job at a starting point here. When you think about categories of need in our community, like affordable for sale, right? Housing. So, that kind of that ability to purchase, the asset quality in our community, which there was just another report saying it's continuing to deteriorate. Access to affordable rental housing, small, equitable access to small business lending, banking services within our communities. All of these are services that I think it is fair to ask, for financial institutions to be providing, and so us thinking through how we cover the widest range while still providing enough specificity to show the policy preferences of the administration in this investment is really important.
We need to know in detail how folks are fault. Know better, and
I wanted to say that as the working group continues to review the data and respond to the information, we will respond to the information in a manner that best benefits the community that we're in. I think you're right on when we talk about not limiting ourselves to 13 commitments, that as we review, we may see that more commitments will come to mind, especially when we start talking about serving the entire community. So my question would be, how does the financial institution provide these services to who and at what level? And I think that's something that we will continue to research.
Let's go to
Okay.
move on to the next
The next one
bullets.
was, and actually, Kevin, I'm going to ask you to speak about this. Kevin pointed out that one of the 13 commitments specifically was a benefit for CHN Housing Partners. And Kevin, your suggestion was maybe we don't call out specific recipients. And
Yeah, we had that in with HRRC.
oh, that's true. We had more than one, right? So they were also named specifically. And that was just, a question was raised, is next time do we not do that? Third one was on the question of lockbox, the lockbox service, the virtual lockbox, which KeyBank, of course, has had that, the facility to do that. The question was raised, should we look into what other counties do? Are they limited to only like one bank that has that facility, or? And I know that you've been interested in that
I
subject.
found out that there is a lockbox within 45 minutes of downtown, just inside another county, at another lender.
Although was the KeyBank a virtual lockbox?
I'm not sure. Madam Treasurer, do you know? Do you remember?
They have the lockbox
Hmm,
in
okay,
Cuyahoga County.
I see.
But I, as have found out that we have West
About
100.
45 minutes from downtown.
Hmm.
Amazing what happens when you ask a series of other questions.
Right.
Yes.
So Huntington has one that's inside Summit County.
Okay. Well, so that was another,
Everything's
Yeah.
20 to 30 minutes away, depending on traffic.
Hmm.
Because, early in the morning or late in the evening, even if you're in downtown Akron, it's only 45 minutes. So the question is, can we draw a circle that allows us to look at more lenders because they have lockbox availability?
and then I'll go on to the next one. The next one, actually, we already did talk about, was just raising the question, the feasibility, practicality, could we meet with 7 banks individually? Well, then there was also a further question that someone raised, is there any way in which meeting with these banks individually would have a chilling effect, leading to some of them not submitting applications? I think that was Matt, and he's not here to further elaborate, but Gary, Kevin, or Barbara, do you recall what he was, because it's escaping me what the further background was to his comment, either of you? So I'm not sure, we
So-
can,
Do you remember what the county did 4 years ago?
there was an RFP or an
There
RFQ.
was an RFP, but
Yeah.
what I can tell you is we are looking.
Oh, you know what? Staff is like, you're not near a microphone.
Oh.
Do
Do you want to come up here and sit?
Yes, ma'am. Just come up and identify yourself, and you're just giving us public information, it's history.
So Lisa Rocco, interim treasurer. So I wasn't involved 4 years ago, so I really can't speak on what happened back then. I know this time around, we are looking at not before, but after we receive back responses, is to ask the banks to come in and do an interview with us. So I don't know if that's
I don't know.
different, if.
Not sure.
So, 4 years ago, Was there any preliminary information? Oh, you can say, I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay,
Madam President.
yes.
Do any of those banks that we're talking about 4 years ago, do they include any of the banks that are on our list now? The seven?
I think there were, I believe, 6, and I think they're included here, but I'm saying that with like 90% certainty. I'd have to double check.
So
and
my
go back.
memory is that all of these banks, except maybe Bank of America, were invited to participate. I don't know if they all did participate.
I could find out probably in 24 hours by
Okay.
going back through some files.
Why don't you just email us
Okay,
all
all
that?
right, yeah.
What's the next one?
Oh, the last one was just the, Matt and Ayana wanted to make a note that they had a conflict
Okay.
that they couldn't get out of it today, and that's why they weren't here.
So we, on a regular, and I'm using the royal we to say the county, not the admin or the council. We have relationships with 10 or 11 different lenders through Star, through some of the smaller depository agreements we have.
We have, yes, but we don't use all of the 10 that we have.
Okay. But we have that depository language that we've executed a relationship with them.
Correct.
So they could receive funds from us,
Yes.
hold them, invest them for us, or disperse for us.
That is correct.
Okay. And so in your work sessions, are you talking about potentially inviting everyone who has an existing relationship with us to respond or not
I
respond?
didn't think of that, to
Okay.
be honest.
Okay, because I think that would be while we examine these folks, I think what we need to do is get from the treasurer, every banking business that has a relationship with us, and make sure that we encourage as many lenders as possible to participate and to show us their stuff. Because, for example, we were led to believe that only one lender historically had a lockbox available. And here, Lisa and I find out that 2 different lenders have something within 45 minutes of downtown Cleveland. And I say this over and over again to folks. When I was a consultant when I was younger and worked in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, 45 minutes is nothing in any of the major cities across this country. You know, if you say it's going to take me 45 minutes to go look at this project site in New York, that's like next door. And in Chicago, someplace that's typically 15 minutes away when you drive to look at it the night before, during the day when traffic is up and you have to go on the toll road to think you're going to get there faster, you're not. So I think we need to think less about technically how far it is and doing things around the corner, and look at how we can be provided with services and benefit. And so, you know, technically PNC's lockbox may be closer than Key Bank's lockbox if it's on the west side on one of the numbered streets.
West 150th.
So,
So that's the recommendation.
okay. Mr. Benjamin, questions, thoughts?
No, I think we're on track here. It seems like all of us agree with where we should be going. And I like the idea of adding the banks that we have relationships with a lot, because that they must want a relationship with us.
They saw, I mean,
Yeah, so
we
let's
did
use it.
Approximately 12 months ago, maybe 18 months ago, we did the depository relationships. Some banks have as little as 200 million, I think it was, and others have the $1 billion relationship, which is the max somewhere near that is the max for some investments. And was that STAR that we were dealing with? I can't remember what piece of legislation it was.
I don't know. It probably was Star,
Okay,
so,
because we had different classes of lenders, and it was there
correct.
were all 10,
Correct.
and we were authorizing the treasurer to create renew these relationships because almost all of them were existing.
Yes.
And so, in looking at those things, I want to see if we can create additional opportunities for ourselves, because while we're seen as just this institution that has lots of money, I'd like for our money to work more for us. I know that is not the traditional perspective, but that's how large corporations got more for their staff. For example, if you deposited with Cheryl Stevens Bank, all of your overnight from some type of retail, or if you were a hotel, then all of the employees who had automatic deposit received those bank accounts for free. And only if they wanted to do more than just the standard depository account were they charged anything by the lender. That Cuyahoga County should be able to ask for those. We were the first county in this state to have tax valuations that generated more than $1 billion for this county. Yes, I am a nerd, and I looked at those things over the years and have thought before I got elected to this position that it is appropriate for us to ask for more than just the ability to deposit at that lender. And so not only do we want a depository relationship, we want a beneficial relationship just like businesses have with lenders who want their business. And it's clear that some of the folks on this, some of the entities or businesses on this list want our business. Even if it's small, they want it. You know, it's like hilarious that 200 million is small. But it is important. Am I forgetting anything? Any recommendations from you, Ms. Rocca?
No, actually, everything that Frank has on his list is what the administration has spoken about because we have listened to this group. And we've asked for very detailed answers, more specific, as, you know, we've listened to all of you. So I'm hoping that we get those specific responses.
What's the goal for, is it April of next year? Is that the
April
goal?
1st, isn't that when the contract?
That's when it expires.
right.
You know, right now, law's reviewing it, so I'm hoping that we can get it out soon.
So my thought would be, if it expires in April, should we go out for the request for proposals 90 days before that at a minimum?
We're looking at getting it out soon.
Oh, well then, hey, I like that even better.
It expires March 31.
Yes.
Okay, so before the end of the year, you're looking to have a request
By the end
for
of the
proposal.
summer.
Okay. Oh, look, do I immediately start to smile? Okay, we can hang out together some more.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the good of the order? Frank, any additional recommendations? No, just we cannot vote because we do not have a quorum. The next meeting, which is good, because that allows folks who were not available to come today to watch this meeting, make some, be thoughtful. So, you know, even if we'd had a quorum, we may not have wanted to vote today so that people could have a chance to let this percolate and make some additional recommendations, like my statement that the 13 questions that were asked before are not necessarily what we ask again. And so this is the time where we come up with, I would invite everyone watching in the listening audience or viewing audience, the virtual world, as well as my colleagues on the committee that are here today, to come up with your top 3 questions. If you come up with your top 3 questions, please email them to Cynthia Mason so that we can do a data sort, and where our questions are similar, she puts them together, and where they're very different, they get their own number. And in that manner, we will be able to have, at the next meeting, the ability to say, pass them out and say, here are the questions that really came up. We might have 20, we might only have 6, we don't know. We could all be in mind meld, and so everything comes very similar. That way we have a first stab at what we're wanting to do, and we'd want to do that anyway, rather than just move forward today. And so, Frank, you will need to talk with Cynthia. I'd like everyone to have those in 10 business days. So, Andrea, could you tell me when 10 business days from today would be? You have the little calendar at the bottom of your screen. Oh, we've got a
Madam-
holiday in
Madam
here.
Chair, 10 business days would be Wednesday, July the 5th.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, it would be, again, Thursday, July 6th.
All right. So I'd ask everyone out in the virtual world who's a member of this committee to please send us your recommended questions no later than July 6th so that we can be prepared for next month's meeting.
Okay.
And of course, we welcome any recommendations from the administration. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order, since we cannot take a vote? Was there a staff recommendation? I've got a bullet here that's making me think there was something I needed to do.
Cynthia Mason, council staff. Actually, some of the topics that we had talked about via our email, I know, Mr. Nowak, you had mentioned. I know there were some committee members that wanted to broaden the scope of the considerations of what the committee wanted to focus on. So some suggestions that were mentioned is obviously when it comes to the banking services, affordable housing, giving, folks that are seeking loans access to those loans, just kind of an array of ideas. So with Chair Stevens mentioning those 3 topic areas, those are the types of things I suggested to her that members focus on, and I will just assemble those topics for everyone and then
For the record,
come up with a list.
I believe the email talked about, I'm looking at some bullets, where lenders can describe their support of affordable housing. That can come in a variety of ways. The number of low-income housing tax credits they have purchased through OFA in Northeast Ohio and specifically in Cuyahoga County. Special projects where they've done, made endeavors with nonprofits to expand how they did business. And historic endeavors to do banking opportunities in underserved communities. And that can range from having not only an ATM, but banking hours in a grocery store in a neighborhood where it is the only grocery store in 5 to 6 neighborhoods, maybe within a 3-mile to 5-mile radius. Those are incredibly important because we have problems. It's easier to create a food desert today than it is to make sure that there's an overabundance of grocery stores in urban neighborhoods. And then how they believe they're finding ways to help create home ownership opportunities. So, for example, have they found a way to do additional down payment assistance programs and made priorities in certain neighborhoods. So those are the kinds of ideas that you may want to put into as bullets in a section where we encourage folks to explain why they might be a better candidate for doing business with us.
Those are great
This
ideas.
track record is incredibly important.
Yes, I think another key area as well for suggestions to the committee is outreach. That's a big piece, having a footprint in those communities, in those underserved areas. So just the dissemination of information, so people are aware of what's out there, what products are available to them, who they can reach out to at that particular institution. So just those broad types of ideas, I just kind of forwarded to Chair Stevens for suggestions.
Okay, anything else I forgot? Nope. Okay. If there are no other recommendations or requests, and you know how I feel, these meetings should last an hour or less, so everybody is willing to come back. They don't think that I will drag them away from their desk and important work that they have to do on behalf of the people and make them suffer listening to me for hours on end. So I welcome everyone who was here in person to come back, and everyone who watched us virtually to swing by the county admin building. Will probably be the third Wednesday in July, and that is the goal. Thank you for participating with us today, and this meeting is adjourned.